Hello and welcome to Wellbeing Wednesdays. Each Wednesday at 1 o'clock, we at the Museums of the University of St Andrews will be encouraging you to take 10 minutes for a break to listen to Museum Storytime. The objects in our collections have had fascinating lives, and the collection is full to the brim with objects that have interesting stories to tell. So take 10 minutes, relax and enjoy. My name's Ailey and I'm going to be your host. So today on Museum Storytime, we'll be speaking about one of my absolute favourite things that we have in our collections. And what is that, I hear you ask? Well, it's our photograph of the Beatles with Cassius Clay, later known as Muhammad Ali, taken on the 18th of February 1964 in Miami. So why is it one of my favourite things in the collection? This is a good question. This is a very good question. I think probably because I am a massive Beatles fan. The singles collection, books, I was as a child convinced that the Beatles were my uncles. That I feel is a commitment to my love of the Beatles, but also I guess an affront to my real uncles. Anyway, enough about my love of the Beatles. Let's find out a little bit more about the moment that the Beatles and Cassius Clay crossed paths in 1964 and the fact that Harry Benson was there to take a snapshot of it. So Harry Benson's a Scottish photographer. He was born in 1929 in Glasgow, and he has captured some of the most iconic moments in living memory. So not only did he, tour with the Beatles and that sort of thing, but he has captured US presidents, the assassination of Robert Kennedy, amongst other sort of major seismic moments in history. He was first asked to document the Beatles in 1964, and he followed them on a trip to Paris. They were relatively new on the scene at the time, and I think Harry Benson was a little bit, sceptical of following this new group of whippersnappers on their tour. But I think he quickly realised that he was on to the next big thing. And he was also given the task of following them on their first tour of America. So the Beatles were taking America by storm. Just a few days prior to the photo being taken by Harry Benson that we have in our collection, they appeared on the Ed Sullivan show for the second time, which really cemented their place in American culture. Now, they played a set list that had all the hits you can imagine. So they played She Loves You, they played This Boy, they played Oh My Loving, I Saw Her Standing There, From Me to You, and also I Want to Hold Your Hand. Classics. They were truly, at this point in time, on the cusp of being on top of the world. So, a few days later, with Benson in tow, the Beatles were to go to Miami Beach's 5th Street gym to meet a boxer who, at the time, was relatively unknown. He was called Cassius Clay, and a mere few weeks later, he became known as Muhammad Ali. Now, he was in Miami about to play one of the most important matches of his life, taking on the boxer Sonny Liston, who at the time was the favourite to win the match. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, we can safely assume that we know who actually ended up winning that fight. But nobody did at the time, really. And the Beatles actually requested a photo opportunity with Sonny Liston because they thought he was the surefire winner. But he refused, didn't want to hang out with the Beatles. So they ended up with a photo opportunity with his opponent instead, who was Cassius Clay. Clay apparently said to the Beatles as he arrived at the gym, "Hello there, Beatles. We ought to do some road shows together. We'll get rich." And he wasn't wrong, really. So Harry Benson was there, furiously snapping away as the photo opportunities rolled in. Clay picked up Ringo's Starr in his arms. They all got down on the floor and pretended to have been knocked out in one fell swoop by Cassius Clay. And in our image, Clay punches George Harrison in the side of the face, and the rest of the Beatles fall down like dominoes beside him. George Harrison later said in the Beatles anthology, "Obviously we were having an effect because all these people were clamouring to meet us. Like Muhammad Ali, for instance. We were taken to meet him on that first trip. It was a big publicity thing. It was all part of being a Beatle, really. Just getting lugged around and thrust into rooms full of press men taking pictures and asking questions. Muhammad Ali was quite cute. He had a fight coming up in a couple of days with Sonny Liston. There's a famous picture of him holding two of us under each arm." So if the Beatles weren't having enough fun in America at the time, that evening on February the 18th, 1964, they actually went to see a drive-in film in the States, and it was Elvis Presley starring in Fun in Acapulco, which, you know, the Beatles were massive Elvis Presley fans, so they must have just felt like they'd hit the jackpot. Oh, to be around in the 60s. So, how did this photograph of the Beatles and Cassius Clay end up in the collection of the museums of the University of St Andrews? It's a good question. The picture is actually part of our Boswell Collection here at the university. So in 1995, Marjorie Boswell set up the Boswell Collection in memory of her husband Harry, who was an avid collector of Scottish art. So the Boswell Collection allows us at the Museums of the University of St Andrews to collect the best examples of Scottish art and the work by Scottish artists, which is really fantastic, and Harry Benson is clearly one of those. So, as a final thought to end this first Wellbeing Wednesday, I thought it would be nice to reflect on what is just so special about this photograph. And what I think is so special about this photograph is the way that it captures a moment in time before the subjects of the photograph could really have known what they would go on to achieve or the impact that they would have on popular culture. And I think that there's something really, really gleeful and exciting about that. Tune in to next week's Wellbeing Wednesday Museum Storytime for another story about another fascinating object in the museums of the University of St Andrews Collection. See you next week. Bye!